Action Plan Analysis on Visual and Multimedia Supports in Reading Comprehension in Students with Language Barriers by Gracie Martin Terry. What is IXL Diagnostic? IXL Diagnostic is a formative and interim assessment platform. IXL is a platform that measures students' success and skills in reading, science, math, and history, aligning these lessons to state and Common Core standards. This platform measures the child's performance level on a scale of 0 to 1200. 0 equals a pre-K level, 100 equals first grade level, and 200 equals second grade level, and so on. IXL is created by educators and subject experts. Through research, IXL has been found to be reliable and valid. The IXL platform is also used to identify and support gaps in students' learning, which makes it a great resource to monitor student progress throughout the year. Student group comparison at the beginning of the year, which was taken in August. So at the beginning of the year, IXL reading comprehension scores of students with language barriers are represented in blue in the graph, and they're compared to native English speakers students who are represented in red. 26 students with language barriers scored an average of 159 on the IXL reading diagnostic in August, which is equivalent to a first grade 5th month performance. 26 students with no language barriers scored an average of 515 on the IXL reading diagnostic in August, which is equivalent to a 5th grade first month performance. Both groups of students were tested using the same platform and tested on reading comprehension material. As we can see from the data, there is a large knowledge gap between middle school students with language barriers and students who are native English speakers. This data demonstrates an almost 4th grade gap in knowledge. Student group comparison at the midpoint of the year, which was taken in January. So the students who have language barriers are still represented in blue, and students who are native English speakers are still represented in red. So the same 26 students with language barriers scored an average of 246 on the IXL reading diagnostic in January, which is equivalent to 50% of the 2nd grade mastery. 26 students with no language barriers scored an average of 589 on the IXL reading diagnostic in January, which is equivalent to approximately 90% of the 5th grade level mastery. One can see that there was growth in both groups of students, those with language barriers and those who are native English speakers, but the knowledge gap is still there. Students with language barriers are still performing way below grade level in January. Identified problem. The problem is a large persistent knowledge gap exists in reading comprehension among students with language barriers compared to their peers with no barrier. Students with language barriers perform well below grade level. The mid-year IXL reading diagnostic data still shows a significant gap in reading comprehension skills. This data represents students at Russellville Middle School. The data shows a significant multiple grade level difference between students with language barriers and students with no language barrier. After analyzing this data, it occurs to me that students with language barriers acquire material and skills at a much slower pace than native English speakers. So, why is this a problem? The first problem is students with language barriers are performing approximately 3 grade levels behind their peers in reading comprehension. Problem number 2 is these knowledge gaps will continue to increase without appropriate targeted support. Problem number 3 is reading comprehension is the foundation for all content areas. The current support that students with language barriers are receiving may not be enough to address the issue in reading comprehension. It is crucial that more differentiated supports are used to meet the needs of students with language barriers. The issue will not only impact the student in English and reading, this will impact students' performance in science, history, math, and many more classes. How did I identify this problem? I analyzed students' data from Access Assessment Scores, ACAP Assessment Scores, IXL Diagnostic Assessment Scores, Classroom Observation, and Student Work Samples. The data sources showed me a consistent struggle with reading comprehension skills among students with language barriers. Through classroom observation and student work samples, students with language barriers often lacked including details, and they demonstrated a misunderstanding in completing assignments. The purpose of this study is to evaluate the effectiveness of visual and multimedia supports on reading comprehension in middle school students with language barriers. The focus area will be to support students with language barriers with unfamiliar academic terms and simplify main ideas of text with visuals such as charts, diagrams, and story maps. The intervention is both accessible and tailored to meet the unique needs of students with language barriers. The primary objective of this intervention is to address and reduce the reading achievement gap through the use of visual literacy strategies. The hypothesis of this study is students with language barriers who receive visual and multimedia supports will show greater improvement in reading comprehension than those with text-only instruction. The use of visuals will reduce the cognitive load on a student with a language barrier, assist them in clarifying abstract ideas, and increase engagement. This hypothesis will be tested through pre- and post-test IXL reading diagnostic scores, classroom assessment, and classroom observations. The population and sampling method of this study. The population is 26 English language learning students, grades 6 through 8 at Russellville Middle School. 20 of the students in the study have lived in the United States for 3 years or less. Their primary language is Spanish. The sampling method that will be used is stratified random sampling. Groups are based on the student's English proficiency, beginner, and intermediate. Stratified sampling will be used in this study to ensure a fair representation across varying English language proficiencies. This approach allows for meaningful comparison between beginner and intermediate English language learning students. Because English language learning students have diverse backgrounds, simple random sampling does not adequately account for varying proficiency levels. Stratification ensures that the study includes comparable groups, allowing the study to accurately measure the intervention's impact. The primary instrument that will be used in this study is the IXL Adaptive Learning Software. It measures reading comprehension, pre- and post-test assessments, accuracy, mastery, and time on task. The validity and reliability is IXL is aligned to the Alabama state standards and offers reliable and research-backed data. IXL provides objective, continuous data that supports accurate tracking of student progress. This adaptive assessment adjusts the difficulty of task based on the individual student's performance, which ensures that the student will be appropriately challenged. IXL's research-backed validity enhances confidence in the accuracy and reliability of the data collected. The study procedures in this study. Students will engage in IXL reading comprehension lesson activities 3 to 4 times per week. Each session will include a brief mini lesson followed by targeted IXL practice aligned to performing grade level standards. Visuals and multimedia supports are embedded into instruction for the experimental group. Weekly IXL diagnostic reports will be used to track individual and group progress. The reports include real-time data, proficiency levels, problem areas, and time on task. The data from the study will be used to adjust instruction and identify growth patterns. The progress of the control group and experimental group will be compared at the beginning, middle, and end of the study. Week 4, I will have a midpoint check using IXL growth data. All instruction and assessment tools used are IXL visuals, anchor charts are a part of the existing classroom framework. The variables in this study. The independent variable will be the type of instruction, visual and multimedia tools versus text only. Dependent variable will be reading comprehension performance, will be measured on IXL scores. The controlled variables will be English proficiency, that'll be balanced via stratified sample. Instruction time will be equal for all students, and then reading material, they'll receive the same content, just differing supports. Controlling variables is essential in drawing valid conclusions. Without controlling factors like prior knowledge or instructional time, we can't be sure growth is due to the intervention. External validity and limitations in this study. The study will reflect real classroom conditions using authentic tools like IXL and multimedia aids. Results may generalize to similar middle school ELL populations. Stratified sampling improves generalizability across proficiency levels. Limitations are small sample size limits broader applicability, technology access and teacher fidelity may vary across classrooms, and cultural differences among ELLs may affect how visuals are interpreted. A strength of this study is to reduce bias and isolate the intervention's true effect. Stratified random sampling by English proficiency creates a balanced group, minimizing the influence of pre-existing language differences. Random assignments further reduces selection bias, making outcomes more reflective of the intervention's impact, rather than the background factors. However, a limitation in natural language growth over time, students may improve their reading skills regardless of the intervention. This makes it harder to attribute gains solely to visual and multimedia supports, which is why ongoing monitoring and matched groups are essential for accurate interpretation. Confidentiality is very important in this study. A key ethical responsibility in this study is protecting student and family privacy. To ensure students and families remain anonymous, all names and identifying details will be removed from the data. Information will be securely stored in password-protected files or locked in physical storage, with access limited to the study personnel. Transparency with families is also essential. Before participation, they will receive clear information about how the data will be collected, how it's used, and how it's protected, building trust and showing that student safety and dignity are top priorities. So, other ethical considerations. When conducting research with students, it is essential that they know that participation is fully voluntary. Families and students must know that they can decline or withdraw from the study at any time without any consequences. Researchers will communicate this clearly and using accessible, culturally appropriate language. Ethical responsibilities also include minimizing discomfort and disruption, adapting materials to students' language needs, and respecting cultural differences. While only the experimental group will receive visual and multimedia supports during the study, the same tools will be offered to the control group after to ensure equity. The goal is to support all learners and not just those in the experimental group. The Institutional Review Board plays a critical role in protecting students' rights and welfare, especially in research involving students and English language learners. While IRB approval isn't legally required for this study, it is essential for ethical credibility and for the research to be considered valid or publishable. The IRB ensures the study minimizes risk and respects participants. To prepare for IRB submission, I must clearly define the study's purpose and methods, outline participant protections, secure informed consent, explain data handling and how to keep the names anonymous, and address accommodations and potential risk. These steps promote transparency, accountability, and uphold ethical research standards. Expected data changes from the experimental group are the average IXL score will increase 75 to 100 points, demonstrated growth from an average of a second grade performance to third grade or higher performance, more skills will be mastered compared to the control group, and improved engagement. IXL diagnostic scores align with grade level expectations, so growth from 150 to 250 represents more than just numbers. It shows that students are gaining ability to understand text they couldn't before. This progress leads to real classroom success, such as grasping grade level work, engaging in discussions, and performing better on tests. That is why this growth is meaningful. It reflects practical improvement in literacy. What I would change from the original plan, I would include a baseline engagement survey to measure students' attitudes and thoughts about the study before and after. I would make an effort to increase teacher collaboration to align the support with classroom instruction, include weekly student feedback on lessons and difficulty for clarity, and then I would include more varied visual tools such as storyboards, comics, and audio recordings. Additional research opportunities. I would like to investigate how specific types of multimedia, such as video versus diagram versus interactive elements, impact reading comprehension. Explore the impacts of teacher-delivered versus software-delivered in visual instruction. Extends research across multiple schools or districts, and conduct longer studies, such as semester-long, to capture the sustained growth in students. So looking ahead, I would use findings to guide instructional planning for English language learning students, implement visual multimedia supports across subjects, not just reading, train teachers to effectively integrate visual multimedia tools, and build a school-wide culture of language support and equity. This study is a springboard, not a conclusion. While focused on English language learning reading comprehension, visual and multimedia supports can improve understanding across subjects such as history, science, and math, where language barriers limit their learning. The long-term goal is to close opportunity gaps by using research-based instructional strategies to meet students where they are. Making learning accessible with visuals and differentiated supports boosts not just their test scores, but deeper comprehension, confidence, and future success.